Today, I will share a few non-trivial tips on how to improve your life, which I have been discovering for quite a long time. My name is Kirill Juran, and I lead a consulting group called SMPL, where we take care of digital entrepreneurs from the perspective of law, taxes, accounting, and business. And today, I would like to share, without any particular order, a few specific tips on how to improve your life that I really wish I had known earlier. This is not something I've read in any articles. It's not just some generic tips on how to be more efficient or any kind of bullshitting. These are specific things I've come up with and would like to share because I believe they have good value. Let's get started. The first tip that I realized somewhat, by the way, is to try to lower your expectations regarding communication. You definitely have some friends who communicate wonderfully, actually respond right away, and others whom you can message and who might not reply at all. Well, being that person who is known for not responding much or is simply hard to reach is actually a good feature. For me, it happened somewhat on its own because I am simply overwhelmed in the long term and it's complicated. However, in general, it's actually a good feature if people don't take it personally that you are not communicating with them because they know that you have a lot going on. It somewhat filters the amount of messages that come your way, meaning that some things, which are actually nonsense, people can sort out themselves, and at the same time, it doesn't offend those who write to you and whom you might not respond to. The first good feature. Another thing that I have integrated relatively recently, especially in Prague, is walking. Very often, if you need to get somewhere within the city, it takes you 15 minutes by tram and about 25 minutes on foot. You can actually buy 25 minutes of walking for just 10 minutes. That 10 minutes is the difference you pay for walking instead of sitting on the tram. Well, I have actually integrated it quite well into my life. I simply walk to work and I walk everywhere. And the result is that I average about 15,000 steps a day, and it's really a good trade-off in the sense that you spend about half an hour to walk for an hour and a half each day. It's good to integrate this, and often it's just about the fact that a person doesn't even think about the possibility of walking there because they wouldn't walk for half an hour. However, taking public transport or driving takes just a little less time, and I really think it's good to consider this. Another thing that I realize is extremely crucial, at least for me, is to minimize self-censorship in life and to minimize situations where you have to self-censor. It's like, I can't say this because I might offend someone. I can't say this because I could lose some advantage. I can't say this because of something. And basically, the more you find yourself in situations where you can't say something, the more it has, at least for me, really ruined my life in the long run. When I realized that I was actually trying to avoid situations, events, and relationships where I had to excessively self-censor, I thought this is really crucial for improving life. Another great tip that I don't always manage to follow completely, but I really try to work on, is not to check my investment portfolio. It comes somewhat from Taleb and somewhat from Kahneman, where actually Kahneman's prospect theory states that we as humans perceive losses about 2 to 3 times more intensely than gains. This means that if you are actually looking at your portfolio on a daily basis, and if it behaves something like a sideways movement, you will experience 2 to 3 times more unhappy moments than happy ones. In the long run, if you check it, say, I don't know, every hour or 4 times a day, you end up experiencing an unnecessarily large number of negative moments. If you find yourself in a situation where you check your portfolio once a month, it is more likely that it will be higher than lower. Considering the market trend, on average, you will experience fewer negative experiences and fewer bad feelings from checking your portfolio. So for me, a good life hack is to realize how we perceive losses and how we perceive gains, and that the usual daily volatility has no effect on how your investments will end up, but it has a significant impact on how you feel about them. Another strategy that I use quite often is to do repetitive things only once. This means that if I identify that I am doing something for the umpteenth time, I consider it my fuck up and I try to set it up so that I never have to do that thing again, unless it brings me some joy. Let me give you an example. I'm packing for a trip somewhere by the sea, and typically I'm figuring out what to take with me. Right now I'm just putting things together, and it's actually costing me a lot of mental energy. And the way to solve this is to make a checklist when I go to the sea. You come up with it once, then you refine it, and if something comes to mind during the process, you add it in. The next time you go somewhere, you won't have to deal with anything. You can completely switch off your brain and deliver a typically better result. This means that having some sort of checklist for your life is, in my opinion, a pretty good strategy to avoid spending a lot of mental energy on things that don't provide any real benefit. Another such thought tip for improving life is to clearly distinguish when I am investing, when I am undertaking, and when I am buying problems. I am specifically an expert in this area, particularly in buying problems, and I have created 3 categories that I distinguish. Investing is typically a passive allocation of money. Entrepreneurship is simply some active activity. such as allocating money, and especially buying problems, is an allocation of money that can be profitable but extremely affects your life in terms of overhead and the amount of problems you have to deal with. Typically, it's like, recently I thought maybe I won't do it, but I bought this castle, and actually that would be exactly buying myself a problem. Because I would actually have to undergo a reconstruction, I would have to do a lot of things. The outcome would be rather positive, it would be more profitable. But it doesn't fall into the category of investing or business. Rather, it falls into the category of having paid money for everything in my life to become more complicated and to have a lot more worries and so on. So for me, it's kind of like this. They are not exact categories, but I use them. And it often helps me to say, Kirill, you're just bullshitting a bit. You're telling yourself that you're going to invest or start a business, but in reality, you're just going to buy a problem. Then it's good not to buy that problem. Another great tip from me is to streamline communication. If you interact with someone very often, it's something that you will work on once, but in the long run, it will pay off tremendously. This means that if we are to function well together, especially in work-related matters, defining what we call something is actually really great. When I want to express this information, I do it this way. Now that we've talked about it, this is how I express myself. You have picked up on it. And from now on, we can proceed very efficiently and simply. I think it has quite good value, especially when something needs to be resolved. And it's not that kind of conversation that leaves you with a good feeling, but rather the conversation that needs to happen to get things done. So in this regard, for me, setting up some kind of communication protocol is extremely essential. And I would say that many people do not do this. It's just like, well, this is how we speak Obercheski, so it actually ends there, but in fact, it completely begins there. That many times even replying, if we are addressing something factual, just replying with J to something like done is actually a good value in that, in the long run, you will write it so many times that you save an enormous amount of work and you are much more efficient in communication together. Of course, there are those communications that bring you joy and pleasure where it doesn't really matter what you achieve because the process is fun. However, some communications are not about the process. You simply need to deliver certain results, and that makes sense. Another approach that I try to integrate is not to spend time making decisions on small things. My thesis is that small things, meaning those insignificant things that I won't remember tomorrow and that don't significantly influence decision-making or outcomes. It is more essential to do it quickly and without expending energy rather than doing it optimally. We are deciding where we will go for lunch. We will go there. It's not a big deal. Of course, if the boundaries involve some kind of diet or similar, then it makes sense. But if we are deciding on similar matters where the outcome is more or less the same, you won't remember it tomorrow and you need to make that decision, then for me, it's good to make it quickly and without burning energy. Even if it won't be the best decision, accepting that it's just okay is good. I'm making decisions well. 7 out of 10 times, 2 times, it's not great, once it's bad, and I do it really quickly and it doesn't cost me any energy. That's all for today. Thank you very much. I hope you found it useful. If so, feel free to share it, like it, or dislike it. It's pretty much the same in any case. Think for yourself. No one will teach you that. Oh, and write me some of your tips in the comments so I can suck some information out of you. Thanks a lot. Bye.